So earlier, we spoke about discipling a new believer, which never stops because we're constantly helping people to come into the faith and learn what it means to follow Jesus. But the work of discipleship does not end with new believers. We want to help people grow in their character, their convictions, their ministry competencies and capacities, all in accordance with the gifts that God has given to them. This is an ongoing work for all believers at all times to grow to be ministers of the gospel to others they meet up with. So we need a path people can walk down to become ministers, disciplers, and for some, even to become leaders in their churches. This is a key aspect to seeing church multiplication take place, to move people from unbeliever to new believer to discipler and leader. So the process of this pathway, again, we'll think through these categories. First of all, with unbelievers, we want to think through, what do they need? They need the gospel. As simple as that, they need to hear what the gospel is and have questions and objections answered. They also need Christian community. They need Bible and doctrine. And as they come into the faith as a new believer, then in that process, they would need a survey of the Bible, a survey of basic doctrine. They need to know how to share their faith and make disciples. They also need to know how to fight sin well and fight temptation well and know how to grow in godliness and pursue righteousness. From there, you're having a growing believer. Growing believers then can go a little more deep into their biblical theology, their understanding of the Bible overall, the details of theology. They can engage in evangelism with others more effectively. They can then begin to disciple other unbelievers and new believers in their faith, and they're learning more readily how it is they kill besetting sins and grow in holiness. And the spiritual leader, we want to have them think through how they not just know the Bible and theology, but how they would teach and convey the Bible and theology. Leaders aren't just saying, how do I grow for myself, but how to help other people grow. These are people, men and women, who have exemplary maturity in their faith. They are engaged in making disciples by sharing the gospel and helping new believers come into maturity in their faith. They're taking initiative to influence people toward God's purposes by God's power. So there's some categories of this pathway. Further then, the process of this pathway would include some key components. So first of all, we want to identify what it is we are looking for. And again, we want to be looking for in this process character, convictions, and competencies. We want to see people grow in their character, their integrity, their day in and day out living as a Christian. We want them to know what they believe and why, and have skills to live well as Christians doing what God has called them to do. We'd want to recruit people in this process and say, we see in you gifts and abilities and maturity that's coming and want to help you develop in those ways. Generally, yes, but also specifically in terms of those things. Now, in saying that, let me just say this briefly here. When you're looking at church life, sometimes you'll see a person operating well in kids ministry and you're in student ministry and you say, man, that person could do well in student ministry. I want to take them from that ministry there and put them over here. That could be okay sometimes. But can I encourage you, look to engage people who aren't yet engaged in ministry overall and help them to develop and then get into and grow in that particular ministry. So you recruit, and then you select. Not everyone that you recruit will necessarily fit your ministry needs and context. So it's okay at times to redirect people in ministry. We need to say this because at times in churches we feel badly about this, but the bottom line is God has gifted everyone in various ways, and it may take some time for them to find their particular area of fit. So recruit, yes, select then and say, hey, this is a great ministry for you, let's get going. Or this is not maybe that exact area, let's think through ways we can get you engaged in this ministry or that ministry. As you then select, think about how you're going to train those people. How will you train them? Initially, what will you do from the front end to help them move into that ministry effectively? Will they need resources, some kind of weekend training, just ability to get grouped with another worker to know how they can work with them effectively? What initial training do you need? And then in ongoing terms, what will you offer to those people in an annual basis? Maybe a monthly basis? Are there things you're gonna do on a formal level with curriculum, with feedback, with things of that nature, and also informal? Just getting coffee or getting lunches and talking to them and seeing how they're doing in the ministry overall. So know initially in an ongoing fashion, what will you do in that way? You want to, again, train these people in character, knowledge, skills, and affections. So again, they can have all the skills in the world, but if they're lacking in character, that's a massive problem in the church. So train in character. Do not shy away. Do not assume every worker in your church is doing fine in their character. We all need to be pushed in that way. Help them grow in knowledge and skills, to know what it means to work in that ministry effectively. Help them grow in their affections for God. Help them grow in their affections for others. We don't want to, as the church in Ephesus did in Revelation 2, lose our first love. We want to be fired up in our affections for God and others in that ministry. Also, give them resources. If there's curriculum to look at, if there are videos, if there are articles, just send those on a regular basis. Teach them, mentor them, offer them experiences, give them chances to be around great teachers, great leaders, to learn from them, offer feedback and coaching as well. So in terms of this, you want to identify again what you are looking for in this way. So the idea of recruiting, selecting, training, and then deploying, right? Thinking through the way in which you deploy these people into ministry. Give them authority gradually, right? Delegate out authority in a gradual way and let them take ownership of a certain area of ministry over time. As you do that, evaluate how they're doing in ministry. You may want to have, if they teach, some teaching rubric you use to evaluate at times. Or if they're ministering in a small group, how are they doing facilitating conversation? Or with kids ministry, how are they doing in terms of getting those kids in place and having a time that is collected and good and ordered and biblical? Have evaluation standards there. Don't be afraid of that. Recognize we all need to grow and we all need to know the basis by which we're evaluated so we can grow more effectively. We need to discuss that with them in detail on a regular basis. Get to know them, meet with them, talk to them, say, I'm seeing these things, commend them for the good that you see, and then offer feedback for growth as well. These are needful things for your people to continue to grow as they do the work of ministry. We should affirm them as well. Affirm. So write thank you notes, like handwritten thank you notes to your people. Write emails to them, texts. Affirm them in public at some point in the ministry year, maybe in a church service, but affirm what they're doing. If they're serving for an entire year, at the end of the year, have a party, give some good gifts just to say, we recognize your sacrifice and your work in ministry and want to see you continue and want to bless you in this way. And in all that process, we're always thinking about as well, multiplication. We want to see beyond that initial leader you've recruited to them multiplying beyond themselves so they can train up others as well. We're trying to help develop disciple-making disciples. And so with that, be sure to always have the mindset of not just one person, but how can that one person impact more and more and more so that pipeline gets filled with people that are constantly growing in their skills, in their character, in their love for God and others. So discipleship development and leadership development then have a kind of convergence. As we think through discipleship and leadership development, a key aspect to consider is, what do I need to give people so that they can grow effectively and incrementally in their abilities and their skills in dealing with various ministry aspects of the church? It's surprising, but there are three components here of knowledge and coaching and experience I want to think through. The surprising component of that is in terms of experience. We think through experience that we're given by others in terms of ministry. That's a massive portion of our growing and developing leaders in our church. Some would say it's 70% of the quality they need to be able to grow in that way. Coaching then is a much smaller part of that process, but a really important one. And the smallest percentage you may think through, and this is surprising perhaps, is knowledge. And why I say that's surprising is most times in our training, we think through, how can I get these people into the classroom and give them instruction, which does matter. It is important. I just want to say, in our churches, if we want to see disciples become disciplers and leaders, we're going to have to give them a lot of ministry experience with that knowledge. And before and after that experience, we need to coach them. Coach them up front, give them feedback on the back end as well, so they can grow by means of those experiences. There's a way in which, as people grow as disciples, at some level, they can lead other people to grow in the gospel and to grow in their skills to minister to others. Now, that requires some things. It requires empowering people with authority. Again, we said this already, but say we want to help people be empowered with the right kind of authority. And empowerment, I'd say, is the intentional transfer of authority to an emerging leader within specified boundaries from an established leader who maintains overall responsibility for the ministry. That's a key idea to think through in terms of empowerment. We want to see that transfer take place responsibly, but a leader can't just hold on to all that authority. They've got to delegate that and give that so that person can grow incrementally over time. So what ministry areas then require my direct attention? Which ones don't? What are the most strategic ministry areas this time and then are in need of more leadership? You could ask, who qualifies as an emerging leader? What are the character and gifts and passions of that leader? And how do we assess that well? How does the transfer take place effectively? These are all just questions to ask in terms of empowering others for the work of ministry. I want to be clear on that and help them know what next steps are. So in terms of just practical action steps on this, we want to be sure we disciple every member of our church to be disciplers. Everyone in your church, I want you to hear this. Everyone in your church should have the mentality, I am a disciple and I am a discipler. Everyone should have that mentality. I'm a disciple and a discipler. I am called to grow in Christ likeness. I'm called to help other people grow in Christ likeness. Don't let members of the church think that's for the pastors. No, that's for everybody in the church. Mentality that's key to have. And then do ministry and raise up ministers. Do ministry and raise up more ministers. Ephesians 4 reminds us that God gave pastors and teachers to equip the saints for the work of ministry. Pastors should have no shyness recruiting members for ministry. This is part of their job as pastors, to equip and recruit and empower ministers of the gospel that are members of the church to do that work well. And then have a process in place to help people move from new believer to growing believer, to serving, discipling, and potentially then leading as a spiritual leader. Know what your process is, write it down, put it in a Word document, a PDF, make it really plain, or put a lot of fancy artwork to it. It doesn't matter. What matters is, do you have a process that moves people from unbeliever to new believer to growing believer to spiritual leader? Do you know the steps you're taking to move people toward that end? That can be more informal, more formal, but the bottom line is we want to see disciples made and disciplers equipped.